Hey, Milton, Presbyterian Church, members and friends, and all others who are tuning into this video, thank you for coming. This is Tom Goy. I'm the covenant pastor at Milton Presbyterian Church, and today is June 11th. It's Thursday, and it's our midweek presentation. This particular part of our midweek work is an exploration of the passage that I'll be preaching on for Sunday, which is Matthew 9:35 through 10:23. Yes, that's a lot of verses. We're going to work our way through them in this video, just as a way to get a feeling for the passage, for what Jesus is talking about, so that on Sunday we'll have this as background, and I'll be able to move on a little more quickly then to the implications that this passage has for us in our lives here in 2020. The other video I'll have today is a continuation of our exploration of the Apostles' Creed. So let's get started. There's plenty here, and it's all good stuff. You might recall last week we had Trinity Sunday, and we used the passage of Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20, which had the Great Commission. This is where Jesus said, "All authority is given to me. Now go therefore, make disciples of all the nations, and baptize and teach. And lo, I am with you always to the close of the age." This was not a cold open for the disciples to suddenly, oh my gosh, we're supposed to go out and do something. Actually, earlier in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus has them go out on a practice mission where he encourages them to go village to village and to do some of the things that Jesus did, to proclaim the gospel and to heal people of diseases and to do all these things. And he has in this in these instructions in chapter 9 and 10, he has in these instructions a lot of practical tips. And it's all in the sense of getting them ready to do what they would do once Jesus was resurrected, once they received the Spirit, and once they began the big work of continuing the work of Jesus and spreading it throughout the world. There's a fundamental missionary dynamic in this that is well worth looking at, because it is part of our rhythm as a church. You know, we have many things we do in church with fellowship and education and worship, but we also have an outreach component where we do need to be sharing the good things that God has given us and to help people understand why we do what we do and what motivates us. That's what mission work is all about. This is what outreach is about. It may be feeding the hungry, and it may be sharing the gospel. There's a lot that comes under the heading of mission. Well, let's get started. Verses 35 and 36. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness. So he himself is doing this ministry. So that's the start. He's the model. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And this is a motivation that sometimes we overlook. That Jesus did what he did because he cared about people. And that care, that's a quality that sometimes gets lost in this hardened world of ours, where everything is so politicized these days and everything is so hardball and everybody questions everybody's motives. Why do we do what we do as people of faith? Because we care. Moving on. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. And Jesus is saying, I'm one person, but the harvest needs many workers to bring in the fruits. Some of you know I've been working in a vineyard lately, doing literally vineyard work. I've been out in the vineyard pruning vines around year round and also participating in harvest. I have a real feel for this idea about harvest. Yeah, you do need a lot of people, especially at harvest time, to bring in whatever the crop is. Well, we're sort of the same way as people. The Lord looks at the human race and says there's a field out there ready for harvest. We need all kinds of folks to help do that. And he's looking at us. Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. Now this is something that takes us into a slightly different place. We're not exactly aware that we have the authority to cast out unclean spirits and to cure every disease and every sickness. But in time, I think there is a very worthwhile exploration here to see how maybe indeed we have been given abilities along this line. But for the sake of our gospel narrative, let's move on and just keep that in mind, that Jesus empowered them to do the work that they needed to do. That's really the key thing here. He goes on in the next few verses to list the names of the disciples. So we'll skip over that. There were 12, of course. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. So this practice mission in Matthew was actually to go out first to only the Jews. By the time we get to the Great Commission, at the end of Matthew, he is saying, go to all the world, make disciples of all the nations. So the scope expands at that point. But right now, for this practice run, just go to the people of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. And that was his fundamental ministry theme. That was John the Baptist's theme. And that still is the theme we have. The kingdom of heaven is near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You receive payment, give without payment. And then he goes on to say what they should take, which is not much. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. In other words, take very little and live off the hospitality and the kindness of strangers, as we hear in a streetcar named Desire. But Jesus is saying, don't take anything. Let others care for you with the very things you need. This is not to be mooching. It is to be a form of hospitality, to simply receive what little is needed and then move on. This is not about making money. This is not about getting rich. This is not about profit. It's about straightforward sharing. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust of your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly I tell you, it would be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. Now that's strong language. What I really hear in that is that, be prepared. Some people are going to receive you well, others will not. And just because others do not receive one well, doesn't mean that they're forever going to feel that way. It just means that you don't force yourself on others. You don't impose. If you're welcomed, you're welcomed. If you're not, don't let it get to you. Don't be filled with rejection or shame. Sometimes folks are just not ready to receive. We all have moments when we're open. We all have moments when we're not. Sharing of the faith, ministering in Jesus' name, is about recognizing when there is permission. Then something can be done. If there is no permission, nothing can be done. He then finishes out with a number of verses, again, that I will not go into at this point. I realize the time is getting a little long here. But it is a sign that when we have ministry, whether we're feeding the hungry or sharing the good news, there's going to be resistance. There'll be pushback. And that's to be understood and accepted. Jesus himself knew what pushback was like. In fact, they put him on a cross, the ultimate pushback. It doesn't mean it has to go that way, but he's saying simply be prepared for it. The world is a hard place, and sometimes it does not really want to be told good news. Be prepared for that. But also be prepared for when the world does want the good news. We need to always be ready and know that God will help us share the good news. God will help us do the right thing. Rely on the Spirit. Well, that's for now. I hope this is a helpful introduction into that passage. I encourage you to go ahead and read it, study it on your own. Think about it, pray about it. It's going to be our centerpiece for Sunday's remarks. Until then, take care and God bless.